Hello, Ken Spriggs here with part one of my new build. And the build is going to be of the two 3D printed Proteus models that I featured in my last two videos. I know that I had talked about in another video that I was going to be working on the 50-foot woman and the Razor Crest. But things do change. Things change a lot in what I want to build. It just depends on what's available. And at that time, I had started to look into these two 3D printed models, but hadn't had them yet, or they weren't yet available possibly. So I've decided to go ahead and pursue these instead to try to get done in time for Wonderfest. And I want to work on both of them. And I'm going to do different dioramas for them each, as I've discussed previously. The large 8-inch one, I want to do a diorama of the inner ear, and the small one, the 4-inch, I'm going to do a diorama of inside the brain. So a couple of bits of information I had kind of looked up on the Proteus, because I was curious why they named it that. So Proteus has a couple of meanings, and it's actually kind of cool because a couple of them really apply here. The first one is, I can't remember, I think it's Roman or not the Greek, but God, kind of the counterpart of Poseidon. His name is Proteus. He's the god of the sea, or the oceans. And so that makes a lot of sense because this is a submarine. There's another one where there is actually a bacteria with the name Proteus. There's some other names with it. So that was also quite fitting since they're miniaturizing and going inside the human body, where there's also bacteria and microscopic things. So it was kind of a cool idea. So I'm working on both of these simultaneously, and I might switch in between them on the builds. But time is getting close on Wonderfest, so they're probably going to go pretty quickly. So I think I'm probably going to call this A Tale of Two Proteus, or Proteai. I don't know how you would spell that. Proteae or Eai, probably Eai. Two Proteus at once. And then working on the elements that I need to in order to not only build them and build the dioramas, but put lights in them and little figures and that kind of thing. So after I'm done with these, I may return to probably the 50-foot woman, and then at some point the Razor Crest. But the Razor Crest is probably my least priority right now about getting done with these before Wonderfest. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the work that I've begun on these. All right, so I'm trying to recreate the look of the inner ear, as I mentioned, with the odd little curving part in the back, a little bit of a flat plateau, and then it slopes off sharply down to a deeper area. Mine isn't going to go very deep. It's only going to be a few inches. So what I'm basing this off of is this sheet of paper, which is 11 by 17 inches, with the idea that whatever covering I put over this, like the styrene and then the eventual image, it's going to have to actually loop over each of these, like come around here, go around this, come up, and go around the top, not the back or the bottom. It's just going to cover the front facing parts. The back will have the bottom will have a piece of wood on it. The back will probably have a piece of wood, something like that, just to cover it up. So we're just going to see like a cross section of the inner ear part, where then the Proteus comes along and it lands down onto this little plateau here, and then and then they're trying to clean out the reticular fibers. And then Raquel Welch, they make a noise in the operating room, and everybody goes flying, and she falls down this steeper plateau. It's much steeper in the film, down into some other fibers. So this will extend out a little bit, and I'll have some fibers down here, but it won't be 100% screen accurate, obviously. But the main points that I needed to have is I needed it long enough so that the Proteus will fit in that section comfortably. And I need this area wide enough for it to accommodate it as well, which you can see that it will. All right, so then what I did was, so I took a piece of foam, I measured out some of this flexible aluminum thick wire, which is used for jewelry, measured it out to be 17 inches, which is the length of this paper. That way I could curve it and bend it, and I basically taped it down as I showed in the previous stills. And I drew the pattern that I wanted it to be. I bent it and put it on the general pattern onto the foam, drew it on with a marker, and then I cut it out with a foam wire cutter and made 3 of them, just replicated it 3 times. So this is basically how they're going to be positioned, 2 in the end, 1 in the middle. And then I'm going to have probably a piece of styrene sheet coming on the inside and making that all smooth. And then, and as I said, having it glued down onto some wood and that sort of thing. So, okay. What I want to do right now is take a piece of canvas. I have some blank canvases. I want to cut out a piece that is a little bigger than 11 by 17, just to kind of test the concept that it's going to fit over top of these three basic shapes here. Okay. All right, so I just I cut out a piece of the of a canvas board. There's the canvas board. There's the wood frame behind it. It was obviously longer. It was like 24 inches by 12 inches. So I cut it out to be just about 18 by 12, so it's a little bigger than it would normally be, just to give me an idea of it covering this foam framework. And I can even make that out of wood if I want to, if I feel like it's going to need to be sturdier. But it's still the basic concept that I have the 3 pieces that support probably some thin styrene, because that's easy to curve around it. And then put the imaging of the that we see from the film for the inner ear over top of that, which I'll talk about here a little bit later. Now I took some out of scale, obviously, styrene tube, and I just temporarily glued it on the bottom of the sub, because it's obviously sitting on its feet on those extended telescoping legs, which I'll reproduce. So it's sitting up a little bit higher, but it looks like it'll fit just fine. And you'll have that back curve wall behind it. You'll have this sharp drop off to the right. And it's kind of sloppy looking, obviously, but in the end, it'll be nice and well done on it. So, okay, but definitely the concept looks sound on it. So let me work a little bit more on that. All right, so I want to go over a little bit about my idea for the actual floor part or plateau, basically the inner ear material, which I showed in images earlier in the video. It has these weird little squared patterns, but they're rounded off in odd shapes, like little cells. And they're kind of they're not this color, but they're kind of an aqua or a teal, that kind of a color. And some of them are more bluish, that kind of thing. And then they have a dark, it wouldn't be white behind them like this. They have a darker part in between it. So what I did was I'm doing a test mock-up first. So I simply just drew onto this paper. At the bottom, you have like these triangles that are dark, and then a dark line that comes down. And there's several of those. And then the rest of it, and that goes over the plateau part. And these weird looking like rounded squares go over the curved plateau part a little bit too. And then everything else above it is just all of these square patterns. And they're not uniform. They're not all the same size. And they do kind of twist and turn a little bit, like they're not exactly in a straight line either. So the reason I'm using a canvas is because I spoke to my good friend Augie Gonzalez. Sorry for the shaky on the camera here. And we were talking about it, and he's going to actually paint this to look like that wall in the inner ear, which comes down onto the plateau for me, onto canvas. And so we were talking about it, and I had come up with the idea that the easiest way to get all these weird little odd squares is to use some stamps. So I took some just basic green foam, and well, first what I did was I went ahead and I measured off, as you can see, squares. Each of these are an inch square. And it's not going to be perfect. I don't want them to be perfectly lined up like this. I'm just doing a test. And then I drew in these as well. These I'm not quite that thrilled with. I might change those a bit. They look a little too big. But what it's ending up going to be then is there's 12 across because it's a foot across. And then there's 14. 14... trying to think. There's 18 inches altogether. I'd have to see, but in any case, I got the measurements, and so I went ahead and I just drew out 1 inch squares onto some of this green foam, cut them out with my wire cutter, and then I went back with a square sponge sanding pad. And I just rounded off the edges and basically made them some odd, weird little shapes so that they weren't all just the same size, the same look. Some are bigger, some are smaller, some have some little parts jutting out, that kind of thing. So that, and I made 10 of them. So that way what I could do then is I took paint and I put it in a bowl. And again, this isn't the color, the final color. And I just stamped them down onto this, as you can see. And they're odd and random and different shapes. So it's a good proof of concept. It's going to look like how I want it to. And in the end, of course, we're looking at it from the side. But this would be, it would go this direction. And this would be kind of the plateau. It would curve down off of the edge sort of like this, and then you'd have those weird shapes coming down from this as well. But all of this top part would be completed like this, and all have those things. And behind these would really be the darker background, and I'm thinking of something more of like a maybe a dark violet or possibly, I'm trying to think of what color, a sepia. I'd have to go and look and see, I'm not sure, but I'll be working with Augie on those. And then these will be like a teal, like I said, like a light teal. Possibly, we were talking about gradient, where they would gradient into like a blue, like a bright blue. And then inside of them, you'll have that darker color that's in the background between them. Now, I made mine a little too big. You can see sometimes there's a little bit of overlap. I don't really want that very much. So what we'll end up doing ultimately is, instead of cutting out 1-inch squares, cut up maybe slightly less, like take off a 1/16 of an inch off of each side, so they're a little less than an inch. And then when you round them off, there's even more. So there'll be more of a, like this. Like I want to see this part in between them. That would, be separating these, thinking of these as cells. And then all of this down here is the lighter part. This is the same darker part, the triangles, and then a line coming down. And again, these would be a little different sizes. They'd be pretty rough looking because it's all organic. And that's kind of the idea. Also, these wouldn't be straight. They might come over and then like jut up a little and then jut down and come off a little bit. And each of the lines would follow each other and be in the same kind of a thing. But they wouldn't be just perfectly straight and symmetrical. That's kind of the beauty of it. I also like how some of these, when I started running out of paint, had like that little spot, which actually would work well, because what he's going to want to do is paint the whole thing with the darker color and then go over with the stamps with the lighter teal and blue. And then if some of it bleeds through like that, that would be perfect, because that's what you actually see in the film, that there's some weird little darker things which he could use like a stiff brush to stipple in some of the darker color too in it. And then some other effects, some other kind of washes and colors in it also to add to it. But that's the plan. So I wanted to do a proof of concept to see that it would work, and it looks like it will. And because I don't want it to be perfectly done, it's perfect like this, because you can see some of these are darks, and some I went over a couple times. Some of these are translucent. Some of these have big spots missing. That's exactly what we want to see on this inner ear diorama. So, all right. So he's going to start working on that part of it on his end. And then, and he'll have it on a loose canvas like this. And then obviously he'll mail that to me. And then I'll attach that onto my finished base for it. And then put things around the edges and the trim and everything of it. So, all right, I think it's going to be pretty fantastic. All right, so I'm starting to do some work on the two subs and fix up any issues or fit issues, that kind of thing. The larger 8-inch seems to be pretty good. The smaller one did have some issues, some fit issues. I've seen this before with 3D printing. Unfortunately, when you change the size of something, the fit that whoever, well, obviously Stephen Burns, who made this, designed it for a certain size. He initially designed it for the 8-inch, so the fit was better. And then if you miniaturize it, if there's just a little bit of a difference, then they don't fit quite right. So I had to play with them and do a couple of things. Part of it was putting them into hot water and straightening out these back fins, which I'm still having to do a little bit more on, get them straightened out. But the main issue was when I put these two together, the back was fitting mostly. I did have to clean up a lot so they fit even closer together. But the front, it just was way off. There was a big gap. So what I ended up doing, I thought the best approach was to take a piece of thin styrene and just glue it along the perimeter of that front part, as you can see. And I'm still going to be sanding it and cleaning up the profile of it, but ultimately it will blend in there. But it raises it just enough so it's more level with this back edge so that there's no gap. So let me put that on there and I'll show you. And there are still gaps, but they're a lot better than they were. All right, so there's the front. And when I press that down and glue it down, that front edge will sit flush. You have the back fitting fairly flush. Now, there is a big gap on either side of these parts here. This is the one gap on the bigger one too that has the main gap, but it's more pronounced on the smaller version. But again, I can fill that in either with styrene or with some putty and that kind of thing, and then fill that in. But I got it down to where it's a pretty good fit and to where I want it to be. Now, I want to use little figures with this, and so I have a bunch of these little teeny figures that I got from Walthers. Let me show you one of these. These are N scale, very, very small. I've used these in the past with other builds. I've had, I think I had maybe 5 or 6 sprues of them all together originally, but different positions, different seated figures, standing figures, that kind of thing. So I want to use them for, I'm going to have a pilot and a ship. This scene, of course, is going to be when they're in the brain. So the scene I'm reproducing is when the 3 are outside the sub, Dr. Duval with the laser, Cora with the power unit next to him, and then Dr. Grant, who's out there trying to blast the damage part, and then Dr. Michaels and the pilot. Why can I never remember his name? Anyway, he's inside, and Dr. Michaels knocks him out and takes over the sub and tries to wreck it into the damage part, ruin the mission. So I'm going to have Dr. Michaels in the pilot chair because that's the only time he's in it. So I played with a figure and I ended up with this tiny little one. Now I had to, let me enlarge that, sorry. Okay, there we go. You can see just how tiny he is. Now, the seated figure that was here wasn't in the kind of pose I want. So I had to cut off his legs because his legs are sitting straight out. He's sitting flat with his legs straight out in this, the way that this cockpit is designed, the pilot seat. So I had to cut those off and readjust them and make them where they need to be. He's not quite perfect just yet. I still have to do a little bit more on him, but he does fit into the seat. Now what I had to end up doing is he was not going to fit through the ring, the control ring, which is right here. So I cut that off. And in addition, with the lighting that I'm using, I don't think that's going to work anyway, but I kept it. If I can put it in there, we'll see, but it's kind of hard. And it's off just slightly on the bigger one, but even more pronounced on the smaller one. So the bigger one I might have to cut off and reposition as well when I get a figure for that one, but I just cut it off altogether. So I just have the chair. I also had to cut off the little headphone part because they were just not going to work right with him. But I can reproduce my own kind of thing. You can see there where I cut that off. Okay, so I just have the chair sticking up, and then he fits into it, And then he goes down, his feet go down and go in those little petals right there. So let me put him in the sub and show you how that's going to look. All right, so there he is in the pilot seat. I'll have to make that a little bit closer. Hold on a second. He's just sitting in there, so I don't want to have him fall out. Okay, so, and as you can see from my fingers, he is very, very tiny. There he is in the seat. His painting is going to be pretty simple. He just has his white scuba suit on. And I think there's a black belt. I'm going to go back and look at it. His face. With this diorama in the brain, this is going to be Dr. Michaels, Donald Pleasance. So he's going to be bald. I can't really tell that he has any hair or not, but his whole head's going to be flesh colored. He's going to be bald. So, but he will definitely look the part. Let me go ahead and put the lid on and I'll show you how that's going to look. All right, and I'm just holding it in place, obviously. There he is. And of course then I'm going to have the ring above him and then the dome above him. So he's not perfectly in there. I have to do a little bit more adjustment to get him to sit down just a little bit more. I might do like a little piece of wire with like a dot of some biminal epoxy on the end to imitate the headphones around his head. We'll see. But it's going to be so tiny. It's going to be hard to see it anyway. But you will see that he's the pilot in there. And of course the seat is going to be dark. And so, you know, he'll stand out that way and those kind of things. So, okay. But he's going to be pretty cool. And I can use the same figures to mock up some scuba people. Well, the other three, Dr. Duvall, Cora, Raquel Welch, and then Grant outside of the sub, but they'll be standing, so, okay. All right, so I looked around several places at Hobby Lobby trying to find some clear little bubble from either some packaging, shrink bubble or something like that. Maybe a cap of a pen that was rounded enough, the right size. Couldn't find anything to match up the dome for the 4-inch version of the Proteus. So what I tried doing is making a vacuum form version. So the first thing I wanted to do is, because it has the bottom part, I glued it down to a piece of styrene temporarily, and I molded this 2-part mold making material around it so that I could isolate just the dome, as you can see, and try to vacuum form it. Real hard time getting it to work. This was the best one that I achieved, but it's got little ripples in it and it's not quite, let's see if I can get a side-on shot. Too hard to focus. It's not quite as deep as it ought to be. So I was trying to think of some other way to go about it, and I thought, you know, it's a shame because I have these little rounded domes that I've used before for some spaceships. I used it on my little mini Spindrift build, and I basically what I did was, these are just like a half bead. I think it's silicone or something, I don't know what it is. Some kind of white plastic, but it has this shimmery thing on top, so you can easily sand that off, and then it's white, and it is translucent. So that worked well for my little mini Spindrift, because I wanted the rounded dome and I wanted it to glow red. I didn't want it to be clear. So I thought, oh, it's a shame they don't sell these that are not solid but are clear and as a dome. And I thought, well, wait a minute. It's about the right size. Let me go ahead and put these onto the actual plate. Oh, and this is my vacuum form machine, by the way, that I got. So I put several of them right down onto the plate. And then I just did the shrink, or the vacuum form over it, and it worked out really well. So here's kind of what came out of it. You can see some still have the little half pearlized piece in there. I had to fiddle with them a bit to get them to come out, but I do have 3 other ones in there. And then I have 2 that I managed to cut out. So this one worked out really well. As you can see. And the thing that kind of gave me the idea was that when I first tested it with the other one, this thing has those little holes in it. That's where the vacuum comes down through. And even though they're so super tiny, look how perfectly it matches. I mean, if I needed a tiny little dome of that type, it's perfect. Literally, every one of them are perfect. So I thought, huh, that's weird. Maybe the other material was a problem. So I'll pull that off anyway. This was just temporary. And then ultimately, there is that part underneath it. Focus. Where there we go, where the lights go around as well. So I can do a couple of things. I can just cut off the bubble from this and replace it with this clearer one, trim it down to where I need it to be, or I can just make my own version of this. Just make a styrene ring, because around that bottom anyway, I'm going to try to work out some way to do some lights. Focus. There we go. But that worked out really well. Let me go ahead and put one of the ones I cut out onto the Proteus and show you how that's going to look. All right. So there we go. Very, very cool. Nice and clear. That's the right size. And again, there's more underneath the dome. It doesn't have the thin ring part underneath it where the lights are. So that would raise it up a little bit to make it accurate. And I can trim off more from the bubble if I need to. There's my little pilot in the cockpit. Let me go ahead and put that on there, and we'll take a look. Now it does tend to push up a little bit on it. But it's going to do what it needs to do. Sorry. There you go, giving you an idea. And of course, like I said, I'm just holding it in place. None of these things are the way they're supposed to be, but I think that idea is going to work out just great. All right, fantastic. All right, so for the larger 8-inch model, I actually did find something that works really well from Hobby Lobby. I looked around quite a bit, as I said. So I found these. These are a 9-well vacuum form plastic palette set. They're made for paint, so you put paint in them, and it's a paint well. There's 10 of them and 9 on each one of these. So basically, it sits like this. You have this little concave dome that you put your paint in, and you just dip your brush in and go from there. But it was the right size for the bubble. I took this little piece with me, and so I was able to kind of approximate it, and it looks like it's the right size. So what I did was I cut one out, and the nice thing is I have a ton of these, so if I make a mistake, I have a ton more. I have like 90 of them. But you can see, here's one here that I cut out. And it fits nicely right over top of that. And of course, the frosted one will be removed. So let me put it on top of here just to kind of give you an idea. And again, like on the little one, it doesn't have the ring and those kind of things down below, but it still gives you a general idea of how this is going to look. Pretty cool. It'll be raised up a little bit as well. So, okay. All right. So that one was really a good, lucky find, and a lot easier to accomplish. But now I have the clear dome for both of them so that I can have, well, obviously because I don't want the frosted one, and so also because I'll have a pilot inside and be able to view him inside there. So, all right. So now I'm going to start working on the lighting. Before I did that, I went ahead and took the domes that were 3D printed, and I cut off the dome, and I smoothed out the inside. And it has just a slight little lip on it, which is perfect because the dome fits right over top of it. Did the same thing with the little one. Okay. And then let me show you. So dome just goes on top of that. I might have to use canopy glue to glue these on, but I might, we'll see. It's such a thin edge of the clear dome that I might be able to just lightly coat this part with the CA glue and stick it on, but we'll see. I'm gonna have to paint this first because the flat part on top is white. It matches the rest of the sub. So let me put these onto the ships and show you how those are going to look. All right, there you go. There's the smaller one. Looking pretty cool. Careful, it's just going to probably fall off on me. And then here's the bigger one. Again, very awesome. And I can still trim down the bottom edge of the dome, the vacuum form dome, to make it a little lower if I need to. But it is pretty pronounced in the film. So So those are going to be pretty cool. So now what I'm working on, there we go, is the idea of, this one is easier because you have that, you know, lip that's set back that I could put some lights around the outside of it. The smaller one, a little more tricky because it's so tiny. But potentially, let me increase the size of that. Yeah. But what I could do is I could sand around, thin out this inner part on this one to give me some more room. But let me go ahead and show you what I had in mind. I have two different options that I'm looking at for lights. All right, so the first thing I looked at was this big long strip of lighting here. It's called cob lighting, as people often refer to it. I don't know what the COB stands for, but this is warm white LED strip. It's very thin, and it's from HDA Model Works that I got this from. And it's a very thin strip, as you can see, has this yellow translucent part over it. I have taken it off because I was testing it without it. But you can see each one of those little circles, these are each little tiny SMDs, very, very small. And they light up coal white when this yellow part's ripped off and it can't be taken off. And I was kind of testing it on the smaller one, and it works on a 9-volt battery. Let me show you how that looks. One second. Okay, so it's hard to see on the camera because it's washing it out, but you can see that those little ones there that are stripped away are coal white. And then these are the warm white. The thing that I like about them both is that you can kind of see in the back there, you can see the individual little SMDs coming through, which is what I want, because in the film, you actually see that. Whatever they used, individual bulbs going around it, there is some delineation visible. So that's a pretty cool idea. Now this tape, of course, is only one-sided. Only the outer edge is going to light up, the inner edge is not. Now, one of the benefits of this is on the back, let me enlarge that for a second here. Sorry. Okay. First of all, there are little SMDs. On the back, you peel it off and you can cut it. So this can be cut into sections. It would be a very delicate soldering job with those two little teeny leads there, but I could probably manage it. And it says 12 volt, but it works on 9 volt. And so I can do little sections of it, obviously, because this thing is very, very long. So that's a benefit of that one. But again, the soldering is tricky. I'll show you here in a moment what it looks like if I can get a good shot on the camera. But the other one that I'm looking at, which I'm kind of leaning towards, are these flexible noodles or filaments that I get from Brick Stuff. And I've used these quite a bit on other projects. These are also warm white. So I was debating about warm white or coal white, but every image I look at it and I keep looking, they are pretty much warm white. And I think it has a lot to do with the lighting and, you know, when you're looking at it. But all the different shots that I've seen, mostly they look like they're warm white. So that's what I'm going to go with anyway. Now, this one's 3 volts, and I do kind of like the look of it a little better, and it is a lot easier to work with. Now, the disadvantage is you cannot cut this like you can this cob lighting. So it's a very long filament. I don't have much choice, but what I'm thinking of possibly doing, especially on the big one, is taking it through the ship and using the rest of it as the lighting part of the inside of the ship, because it'll all be back in this area and you won't be able to see it, and just use that to light the inside of the ship as well as the dome, and then, you know, take it down through the bottom. Both of these, it's going to go down out of the ship, and it's going to go into the base and be lit up from underneath. Now in the big one, I'm going to have the 3 telescoping legs that I'm going to take it down through, so I'll have to figure out where that is and how I can get to them. But that's an option that could work. The tinier one, a little harder, simply because this is very long and I would only need a small bit of it. A lot more would have to go down through the bottom of the sub. But we'll see. I'll play with it. But let me go ahead and just kind of wrap these around the outer part of these, and show you how those are going to look. All right, so again, like I thought, it's kind of washed out in the camera, but they do look, there's more of a delineation between them, but not quite as stark as I want them to be. All right, but it does fit around that ring, of course. But not quite as happy with that one. Let me show you the other one. All right, and pardon the flickering, I just have it taped together. But this one, you can actually kind of see the delineation a little more. It fits in there better too, because it's thinner. Come on, you stupid thing. Also, what I like is it's kind of putting a glow through the clear 3D printed material onto the inside. Sorry. Where the pilot is, so that some of that might bleed through, because I'm not going to paint that part. But that looks pretty cool. Let me put that onto the ship and show you. Okay. So obviously I'm just holding it in place and jerry-rigging it, but it looks pretty sweet. I think that's going to give me the idea of what I want. I really like that a lot. So I'm going to try to find some shorter ones. I have seen even a video just today I watched from Boyle Hobby Time. He had a very short one of these filament noodles. I haven't seen them. I don't think Brick Stuff has them. He might have got them from like AliExpress or one of those. Just takes forever to send anything, but we'll see. If anybody has any ideas of a quick way to get them, let me know. But it would have to be within like the next week, since we're coming up on Wonderfest soon. But I think that's going to work. I think that's going to be pretty cool. All right, let me see if I can do it with the tiny one, but probably even harder. All right, there we go. So also very cool, very realistic. Oops. Let me put that back on a second. All right, so obviously, as you can see, it's a little too wide to go around that thin part. So that's what I was saying. I would probably have to thin that out in order to be able to accommodate it, or even possibly remove it all together and just use this in its place. Oops, just dropped the little dome. But I think it might work. I'm gonna have to play with that. But definitely, I think it's gonna work great with the big one. The littler one, a little trickier. I might play with the cob lighting to see, because that I could do just one section of it, and it is strip lighting, so it has, you know, it's metal, thin metal. I could remove this entire bottom edge and just use that in its place, and have it so that it goes down into this little circle. I could even enlarge that circle so it fits in there. So, all right, but we'll see. But I think either way, I've demonstrated a proof of concept that this is going to work, and I'm going to be able to light both of these. And I think that's going to be pretty awesome. The dome, of course, is the most important part that I want to light. And then I have other options for putting some lights inside of the sub, just to give it some ambience in there. The sub isn't necessarily going to be focusing on the interior of either. I'm going to be focusing on the pilot, and then I'm going to be focusing on the people outside of it. But I will have the interior, of course, painted and windows in them and that kind of thing. So, all right. But definitely a lot of progress on these, and hashing out some of the more difficult challenges as far as the clear dome and the lights, and certainly starting to work on some people. As far as the bigger sub, I'm going to end up 3D printing some figures, looking around for some figures in scuba gear, that kind of thing, and see what I can work out. So, okay. All right, so that's going to end the video for this first part of my Tale of Two Proteai or Proteus models. A lot of good concept building and work on them to hash out some of the more difficult things, such as the lighting, potential figures, that kind of thing. And I'm doing some other things. I've been looking into some other things, like some figures that I can 3D print and that kind of thing, in order to work on these builds. And then, like I had said, I had also started talking to Augie Gonzalez about doing the painting for me as well, which he's going to be working on here soon. And my arm is improving. I'm now a little over a month since the surgery, and I'm able to use it a lot more. That's why I'm able to devote some time to building these. And that'll just continue to get stronger as I go. So hopefully that'll give you some good prime weeks in May in order to get these done. So, all right. Well, thank you to all my new subscribers, and I will see you in the next video.